for all of us. It's about predicting where the consumer is going and getting half of it right.
One of the things we want to do is create ads that don't suck.
Embracing change creates great possibility.
I'm Alan Hart, and this is Marketing Today.
Today on the show, I've got Mayur Gupta. He's the Chief Marketing Officer of Freshly. Prior to Freshly, he was the Global VP for Growth and Marketing at Spotify, where he was responsible for growing the free and subscribed user base for the company. Prior to that, has spent stints at Kimberly-Clark, as well as Sapient. He's an engineer and a master's in computer science, so it's a fresh perspective that we haven't necessarily heard from on the show. And today we get into what he thinks about marketing, where it's going, a little bit more about Freshly and their mission to deliver food and wellness to people. Over 100 million people is their target. And I hope you really enjoy this conversation with Mayur. Well, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. So I'm Mayur Gupta. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Freshly, which is a wellness platform with a clear mission to make eating healthy a lot easier for people.
Well, welcome to the show, Mayur.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks for having me.
We've got a lot to talk about today, but let's start with you growing up and going to school in India. What do you remember most fondly about that?
Yes, of course. Well, a lot of fond lifelong memories of my family still back there, and a lot of my childhood friends are there and doing fantastic. And I honestly remember everything from my elementary school to my undergrad to grad days in college. Definitely a lot of cricket and tennis. And, I feel India has, of course, grown as an economic powerhouse. And at times I feel I wish I was born at this time in India. The kids coming out of school and college today are fearless, they're ambitious and they have a purpose. And in many ways, I find they are born entrepreneurs, and some incredible companies like Flipkart and OYO that have become global phenomena, have come out of there with very young people. And, but at the same time, sometimes I feel countries like India, where we obviously have a very high population, sometimes the number of people exceed the kind of professional opportunities you get. So from a very young age, you get into this competitive environment where it's a race for survival. And so you kind of train yourself like that. But sometimes it's good and bad. But being an immigrant here in the US, I obviously learned a lot and have a lot of appreciation and gratitude. But, one of the topics that often come up when I'm talking to my friends who've moved or others is how in countries when you have too many people, there's this sense of corruption and a political environment, even though that's not the core of this conversation. But
right.
America used to be and still is a dreamland for many people. And when I grew up, it was the same. What I realized was countries like India, I feel the corruption is visible, right? It's in your day-to-day life, and it impacts people in what you do every single day, but it's localized, it is in that country. I feel that in more developed countries like the US and UK and others, now having been here, and I'm part of the system, by the way, so I'm not talking as an outsider, but rather an insider. I feel that corruption is more systematic, it's invisible and it is more organized. And we talk about that often here in our healthcare. And I feel that the impact of some of the decisions we make is not just localized. As a matter of fact, it's more global than what happens in some of the other countries. So not the answer you were looking for, but
no, but it's so true. And we were talking earlier, and I had never thought about the connection between the visible and invisible corruption, because most people, I grew up in the United States, so it's one point of view, but you think of this place as a land of opportunity, right? We were taught from an early age that you can achieve the American dream, although that's changing. But there's so many people nowadays that are disenfranchised here, and to your point, it's likely because the system is rigged in some ways against them. But it's invisible. It's not just making sure that you pay off your teacher to get a good grade. It's you know
Even
it's
though that
more.
may happen now.
Yeah, no, exactly. Or get into an
Yeah,
elite institution.
right.
But it's you're so true. It's so true what you just said. So thank you for sharing that. And I can imagine, growing up in another country, a developing country, it leaves you with a drive, like you described, that has probably propelled you through your career. So let's kind of start there. Where did you start your career, and what's been the path to become CMO at Freshly?
Yeah, so the path, of course, now looking back, seems like of course, a fantastic journey and full of mistakes and a lot of lessons learned. And in many ways, I often call my journey as quite accidental, simply because I was never meant to be a marketer, and never studied marketing. I grew up as an engineer. I did computer science. I did my master's in computer science at home in India, and writing code. And for the first many years, did exactly that, and quite shit code sometimes. But uh, interestingly, and I used to work at a company called Sapient, which is now part of Publicis, and back then it was one of the largest digital agencies / partners, and so on. So the interesting part in my journey was when I gradually got into product development from pure technology, sometimes in the mid 2000s, when Sapient acquired a company called PGI. And that really got me into this world of ad tech and marketing tech, and more from pure tech to building products for the world of marketing and advertising. And since then have gradually taken baby steps to get into the center of marketing. And coincidentally, the world of marketing itself has been evolving, from the pure days of Mad Men, where marketing was all about pure instinct and irrationality and creative and funny, to today, where marketing is accountable, measurable, addressable. It has way more meaning and purpose. So I feel that those two things just organically connected for me, and it wasn't a conscious choice. And yeah, so it's very exciting to be here. And I last thing I would say is, throughout my career, I've grown up with tech and data and science. The world has been binary for me, but the last 5 or 6 years of my experience has really taught me that the world isn't binary, and the world of marketing isn't binary. It just is not about what works and what doesn't work. There is the irrationality, the serendipity of marketing should never go away. So while we often talk about data, there's a thin line between being data driven versus being data inspired. And I'm on that journey now, just as an individual, as a marketer. How do you balance that? How do you balance that underlying cultural and humane impact with the tangible impact on business, tangible impact on growth and people's lives?
That's very true, and something we should keep at the forefront of what we do as marketers. I know, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about a couple of stops that you've made along the way on your way to Freshly. So I think it was moved from Sapient to, and I may have this out of order, but Sapient to Kimberly-Clark. So I'd love to know about that transition, and then how you found yourself at Spotify, and then what brought you to Freshly, if you don't mind.
Sure. No, I mean, just a few months back, I had this opportunity to share a little bit of this journey, which is quite embarrassing. Not because it's anything special, but because there was nothing special. So it took me a while to put it together. So the way I was thinking about that when I shared it 3 months back was, Sapient was almost like a gym for me, or I was learning the craft of everything. And so in many ways, besides that one pivotal point where I got from pure tech to product development and advertising and marketing, I feel the key pivotal point for me was this transition from Sapient to Kimberly-Clark, to corporate America, Fortune 100. And I think it was an interesting and disruptive role as a chief marketing technologist, sitting at the center of a CMO and a CIO, and I learned a tremendous lot. But in many ways, the big transition that happened in myself as a professional was, I felt for the first time I had a point of view, or the situation forced me to create a point of view and a perspective, which I never had earlier. And at the same time, it also gave me a lot of courage that what was more important always was to have a perspective. And there was no perspective which was right or wrong because it was just mine, as long as I believed in it. And I feel that I can, if I'm plotting my career on a graph, it will have a pre-perspective or a pre-point of view stage and a post-point of view stage. And that's been such a learning, just a tremendous thing for me, not just in a professional life now, but as an individual as well. And then I think the last stop was, and I would love to talk a lot more about Freshly, but it was, there was so much that I learned at Spotify, and which is now, together with the rest of the leadership team, with all their experiences, we are now bringing at a fantastic place called Freshly. But my big takeaways from a wonderful place like Spotify was, one, and this was a transition from, imagine, Fortune 100, Kimberly-Clark, a 150-year-old company, and one of the most disruptive brands called Spotify. So what I took away was that the only moat that you have in the world today as an organization is speed, is your ability to move and test faster than the competition. And when you do that, there is meant to be chaos. There is meant to be this chopping and changing of ideas, of strategy. And what I learned was the goal is not to kill that chaos. The goal is not to bring calm, but is how you harness that chaos. And the only reason and the only way you can actually do that is when you focus on the internal culture, is the power of the people inside the organization. How do you build that trust, the transparency, where there's no anxiety, and so that was my biggest takeaways, and is how do you harness chaos to drive scaled growth, and how do you not worry about day two problem and just focus on day one? So all of that led me to Freshly, which I deeply am connected with our purpose and mission, which is to change human life, because there is so much happening in our life which is crazy and chaotic, and we believe that nutrition is the single largest influencer of your well-being. And it's one area which has been most underpenetrated, and that's where we are playing. And it's a blank canvas. We're a fast-growing company. We've been here for the last 4 years with the founders, Mike and Carter. And I feel super excited about the mission, on one hand, of what we are trying to accomplish with impacting 100 million lives. At the same time, it gives me a blank canvas to draw the blueprint for marketing, the way I envisioned over the years.
Nice. Well, tell listeners that we have listeners all around the world. So tell listeners what Freshly is and where they can find it today.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, we are a wellness platform that is centered around nutrition. And our mission is to remove all and any kind of barriers from healthy eating. So it's fundamentally to democratize healthy eating, because we believe that's core to our well-being. So we are an online subscription platform. You can download the app Freshly. It's available in the United States right now, and we obviously have a vision someday to go global. But right now there's a lot to do in this country. So it's an online platform. You can go to freshly.com or you can download the app, and it's a weekly subscription model. So you get a box. You can choose to get 4 meals, 6, 9, or 12. The fundamental difference and what makes Freshly unique is that this is fully prepared meals, non-frozen, healthy and delicious at your doorstep. So there's no cooking needed at all. It's 3 minutes. Choose your methodology to heat it up and eat it. And, if Alan, I'm sure you've seen this, that historically healthy eating does not coincide with delicious eating,
right,
or delicious meal. Or if it is both of that, then it is not economical. Or if it is economical, then it's not accessible. So the core of Freshly is the intersection of convenience, health and taste, and access/affordability. And that's why I often share with others that the hard work for Freshly has already been done by the team and the founders. And my job is a lot easier. It's just to now take the core product and take it to 100 million people. So that's what Freshly is. Yeah, it's very excited about where we are headed, and a lot more to come there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I have got to try it out because the convenience factor of just being ready to eat is a big one for me.
It's a
I feel
no-brainer. And,
right.
if you have children, I cannot tell you how crazy our mornings are.
Yes.
And at least twice a week, my kids now take their own favorite dishes. Of course, they don't like everything, but they have their own favorite ones, and they just take it and they take it to school. They heat it up. And from me and my wife, the reason why we don't hesitate is because we have so much confidence in what they are eating now, even more so than what we cook at home.
Right. No, that's awesome. Well, I would consider you a quote unquote young CMO. I hope that is an okay moniker to label you with, because you have reached the CMO position really early in your career. I think first at Health Grades, which we didn't talk about, and now again at Freshly, and you've been a marketing executive for many years. How, do you think that the fact that you're younger, earlier in your career, achieving these levels of success, has that changed your approach or your perspective on the job itself at all?
Yeah. I wouldn't say, I don't know if I'll say young, but I'll take younger. I think that's great. I'll take it any day. But honestly, Alan, I'm not sure if age necessarily changes much because, to be quite candid and honest, everything I have learned about marketing is from my leaders that I've had over the years, who've been around for so many years. So I've been very fortunate like that. But I would say that this generation of marketers or CMO, they are coming into marketing with no baggage, or if I may call the Mad Men baggage, or in other words, there is less to unlearn as a marketer if you're coming into that space today, because otherwise I feel marketing has to go through a journey of unlearning. Marketing has to stop marketing. That's the biggest challenge that marketing and marketers have. But the core DNA of the generation today in general, is of young people, like it revolves around proving impact, impact to people's lives, impact to the world, impact to business. They live a social and always on connected life. And so it's whereas 8 years back or so, we were having conversations where marketers were trying to figure out so-called digital, right, or social, and what are these? These became bolt-ons. Whereas the generation today, well, these words, the vernacular doesn't even exist, because you're not doing digital marketing. You're marketing and living in a digital world. So fundamentally, that is definitely different. From my standpoint, especially as an engineer as well, and a bit of a misfit in marketing, I've kind of realized that my core focus and the belief in marketing is centered around driving growth, and that you market to grow. And if you're not driving that impact, then there's no reason for you to exist. But my definition of growth, though, is not limited to just the quantitative numerical growth. I define growth as growing the brand, growing the user base, and growing the user value. So it's the intersection it's a Venn diagram where these three become inseparable. And some people may call it, the brand marketing versus performance marketing, or retention marketing. But at the end of the day, it is the underlying foundation of a cultural and a purpose-driven brand, which then drives you to grow the user base and create new demand for, with audience that don't even know that you exist, or sometimes your product, sometimes a category. And then the virtue of growing the user value is the only way you can drive any kind of retention or lifetime value, because the consumer today has so much choice, so much access, that you cannot take loyalty for granted. You have to work hard at it. And the only way you get that is when you challenge yourself to add incremental value every single time you engage with that user one more time and one more time. And I think Amazon's been a great example of that. And we challenge ourselves every day at Freshly to imbibe those principles.
Got it. Well, one of the things you mentioned earlier was your technical background, the fact that you're an engineer, a master's in computer science, and you've been, I guess, coined as a marketing technologist at some points in your career. How, as a CMO now, how do you stay current in all that's changing? It just seems like there's constant change and flux.
There is a lot happening, and it's good and bad. On one hand, it's exciting to see all the innovation happening around us, and a lot of great ideas, a lot of great companies, a lot of great technologies. And I often say that disruption that's happening is much faster than the pace at which the organizations are able to adopt and evolve. And because of that, while all that greatness is happening around us, I still feel that 80% of that is underutilized. It's when you really peep in and see what brands and organizations are doing, it's a bit of a hammer situation where everything looks like a nail. And I think it requires a fundamental shift as a technologist, where we have to hold ourselves accountable to the measurable impact that we are creating to the business, to the experiences we're delivering for consumers. And in other words, it's a shift from the adoption and the build out of technology to the application of technology to change life. And that is still the gap. And I see that every day in our business, in what we are doing. And oftentimes, technology is no longer the limiting factor, but it's how much are we able to apply it? How much are we able to connect it with data and our understanding of the user, with other elements of marketing, from content to storytelling. And now it is this complex and fragmented world of marketing that now has to be stitched together to deliver that ultimate experience, which is no longer abstract. It is real, it is personalized, it is relevant, because that is what will inspire human behavior. So I feel that in my basic ways, my tech background helps me to put that systems context together, and the systems thinking that can take you from top down and a bottom up approach. So, and I enjoy that. I think I would say that marketing today is complex, and it'll be good if we don't make it complicated, but it is complex with all the channels and touch points, and it's fun to try and stitch it all together, putting the consumer at the center.
Gotcha. Well, as you look at the complexity and the just state of MarTech and AdTech today, how would you describe the state of that part of the ecosystem, if you will?
I think it's a lot happening there, and some things are coming along. Some things are still huge challenges. There's a lot of talk around privacy and fraud and transparency. And I was just reading some new updates from Facebook last week. And I was talking to somebody the other day about, just as an example, about data. And my perspective on that, just picking that up as one of the topics, was on one hand, securing your personalized information, your personal data, that's table stakes. There should never be a question about that, hey, how the world of ad tech and marketing tech has to ensure that. That is unquestionable. The part that is questionable is, should the data be leveraged by these platforms, by these companies, to do something with it? And my response to that is, especially for the millennial and the Gen Ys and Zs and whatever alphabet we are on now, is that for me personally, I'm okay if you want to leverage my data, as long as I can see a tangible value coming back to me, right? But I'm not okay if you leverage my data for your own benefit and nothing comes back to me. So I'm absolutely fine when Netflix is understanding, measuring, and watching what I'm watching, because I know that they will use that data and my behavior to elevate my experience when I come back the next time. And I'm totally fine with that. Or somebody knowing what my needs are, because they are going to get me, or they are going to be able to fulfill my need even before I know I need it. So those are incredible places. And I, as a millennial, I'm totally fine sharing it as long as I see the value coming back. But I think that's my point about marketing tech and ad tech. The focus should be not just in the act of producing more technology, but it should be in the process of understanding how technology will solve human behavior, how technology will solve the gaps we have in our daily lives.
And it seems like there in the landscape today, there are solutions that do exactly that, and there are good actors, but there's as many. It seems like vaporware or threats around the corner. What do you see as the biggest threats for marketers or brands as it relates to technology?
I think specifically around technology, I feel the biggest challenge, I'm not sure if it's threat, is going to be fragmentation, and the need for
Yeah.
convergence. And of course, look, it's cybersecurity, data, all those things are there totally. And I'm sure that with today's consumer, with the voice and the power the consumers have, we'll keep addressing it. But I feel at a more fundamental level, marketing has to understand that the real experiences happen in the absence of silos. And today we are living in a world centered around channels and touch points, and not really centered around the human and the consumer or the consumer experience. And I feel that's the journey forward. And I also feel that purely from a marketeer and marketing standpoint, the academia has to evolve. Marketing as a function has to evolve, because the expectation that leadership and organizations and the CEOs have, the expectations that the consumers have, can no longer be fulfilled by this vertically siloed function of traditional marketing. Marketers today have to understand data, they have to understand finance, they have to understand technology. Of course, they have to understand and master content, storytelling, and etc. But the experiences you deliver are no longer in any one of these silos. They happen at the intersection. And that's the bar that marketers and all of us have to set for ourselves.
What would you, if you, we're thinking about academia as one example, these educational institutions, what would it look like if they were training the future marketer in your mind? Like, do you have any visions for that?
Yeah. I mean, think beyond the academic definitions of 4 A's and 4 P's, and but think about, like, I almost think it's, instead of masters and undergrad in marketing, you should be doing masters in consumer experiences, undergrad in consumer experiences. And look, I'm saying it, I never went through that. I went through a very tough journey to figure things out. And that's why perhaps I'm 8 years behind a lot of other great leaders out there. And I was slow to everything. But I feel that in the world today, knowledge and technology and capability is table stakes. You're walking around, you tap on your watch, or don't even tap these days, and just ask through a voice command whatever question you need. The focus is that critical thinking. How do I apply all of these things to deliver experiences that will change people's lives? When Uber came out, the technology wasn't like you were taking a rocket ship to the moon and bringing them back straight on. Yeah, it was simple.
Right.
Getting somebody a car to go from place A to place B. But it was a critical thinking that there was a gap in human life that technology could solve, and rather simple technology could solve through a very simple experience. And I feel that kind of critical thinking should happen up front from the very beginning. And I'm seeing that. I see that with my daughters. I have 2 daughters, 9.5 and 5.5, and they're still very early on. But I'm starting to see that, in the world of academia, is how they're challenging them to think very differently. It's no longer what I went through, which was very bookish knowledge. I had to mug up everything, and I understood probably 10% of what I went through.
Right. No, it's very true. Very true. I have an 11-year-old, and she's at a school that teaches kind of project-based learning approaches. And I wish I had been taught that way, frankly.
Yes.
Because it's teaching them how to learn, not just teaching them the facts that they need to know.
Absolutely. And that's a beautiful way of saying that. Yes, it is the art of learning, because that never ends, right? And that is what keeps you young, and that you never cease to learn throughout your life.
Right. Well, we'll call you the younger CMO, but not only are you a younger CMO, you've managed to make it into the boardroom, which is like, I do a lot of work with CMOs through an organization called the CMO Club, and this is an ongoing topic. And you've already achieved it at an early state in your career. How do those opportunities come about? And maybe more important is, what have you learned from it, and how does it help enhance your job as a CMO?
Yeah. Not exactly sure how they came about. Of course, I was approached in some cases by some exec recruiters, in some other cases some relationships that formulate into these opportunities. And but sometimes I credit some of the things that I've written which haven't quite made sense, but I think they do get you higher up in search engines, I guess, is the only way I'll put it. But but I've learned a tremendous lot from these opportunities. Of course, when you're sitting in a boardroom, you are surrounded by some incredible thought leaders, some incredible leaders who are running the organizations. And what I learned over the years, Alan, was this understanding that no matter who you are and what vertical are you operating in, CPG to entertainment to healthcare, and no matter how big or small you may be, the kind of challenges and the opportunities that every organization face 9 or 10 times is exactly the same. Everyone is struggling with fragmentation. Everyone is struggling with this mindset to move faster. And everyone is struggling to figure out how do we become fearless. While everybody wants to have the appetite to take risk, there is a lot of fear, especially when you're a successful business. So how do you balance that conundrum of moving fast and experimenting and testing, but also not putting your business at risk, which has been so successful? So, I mean, so what that leads me to is what I learn in a boardroom, I bring back, in my world at Freshly. What I learn at Freshly every single day, I try and take that back into those boardrooms. And this is this constant journey of testing and learning and applying. But another way of saying that is the moment you put the consumer at the center, your challenges and opportunities become very consistent. They are industry agnostic today.
Interesting. Very articulate, the fragmentation, the mindset to move faster, and this notion of trying to drive more fearlessness. I can see that. I can see it applying to almost every single business. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I love to do is to dig a little deeper on the individual that it comes on the show. And I love asking this question, which is is there an experience of your past that defines or makes up who you are today?
Yes, many. And I think we will have to do 3 more podcasts to go through those. but if I have to summarize what represents or what I represent, or what I reflect, I can boil it down to my Buddhist philosophy, which my wife introduced me to back in 2006. And my mentor Dasoku Ikeda, who's a world leader in Japan, but he's really taught me, along with 12 million other people who practice this beautiful life philosophy, that life is cause and effect, and and everything we have in our life, our surroundings, our environment, our work, our families, is a reflection of our inner self. And if I ever have to change that transformation begins from within and not without. And as a kid growing up in India, with all kinds of different philosophies and religions, I always grew up with this mindset of believing in destiny, and that I was born with one, and I just had to let things happen. But this life philosophy has totally changed that in my mind, where it believes that my present is a manifestation of my own actions in the past, and my future is no longer a mystery. It's a manifestation of the actions I take today, which means that only I am responsible for my past, present, and future. At the same time, this philosophy gives me the courage and the wisdom and the compassion to transform the effects of my past causes with what I can do today. And I kid you not that every day at work, I challenge myself to apply these Buddhist principles, of courage and compassion. And when I make a mistake, it gives me the courage to realize that, yes, I made a mistake, and what am I going to do to make it better? How am I going to be the person who will not complain and point finger, rather figure out how do I take responsibility of that, or for something. So that's the core. And for me and my family, and across the board, even in India. And we love that. A lot of appreciation and gratitude every single day.
I love that. I love that. And do you feel this transformation you've gone through? It seems like it would make you much more present in every moment if you're disciplined about it. Is that the right way to think
It,
about your everyday?
It is. It is. And in fact, you said it beautifully. In Buddhism, we say it's from this moment on. And it is a focus on what you can do right now for yourself and for the environment around you, which includes people and everything. But yes, it is. It is all about. The philosophy centers around faith, practice, and study, and those are the three key pillars. But yes, it's all about how do you transform your present.
I love it. I love it. Well, what fuels you? What keeps you going?
A lot of things, like many of us, but I'm sure like all of us, everything centers around your family. My daughters, my wife, my family, my dad back home. So they definitely are the nucleus of everything I am, and I'm sure you probably would say the same about your family. But what I really am appreciative about is what is around that. These are in these concentric circles. So I truly enjoy what I do at work and professionally, and I'm loving our mission at Freshly. I live and breathe that. I love the team. I love what we're building together. So that's the other part is my work is not work for me. It's not a burden. It is what I truly enjoy and I get excited about. I obviously what gets me going is some of the other things I love doing in life, which is tennis and cricket. And at one point, as a kid, like as every one of the billion kids in India, I wanted to play for the country until I realized that that couldn't happen. And then I started playing here in the US until my wife realized that that cannot happen either because I was spending the whole weekend on a cricket ground. So that's when shifted gears to tennis. So now I do play 2-3 times a week. That is my daughters play, so it's fun playing with them and my other friends. So that's what gets me going as well. And just everyday battles in life. And I should share on this podcast that we live in Chicago, but for Freshly and for Freshly's mission, we are now moving to New York finally. And hopefully this is our last pit stop for many, many years. And New York is going to be home in the next couple of months.
Well, congrats on the move. And I will say a tennis match is a much shorter and easier thing to fit into your schedule than a cricket match.
That is right.
It goes on for days. Yeah.
Yeah. That conversation did not last very long. So. I knew what I had to do.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's fairly clear when your wife says with a certain tone, you know exactly what you need to do. So, a couple last marketing questions for you, because I feel like most marketers are kind of students, and you've demonstrated this through everything you've said today. Students of what you're doing and how you look about the world. Are there brands or companies or causes that you follow and you think other people should take notice of?
There are lots of them, and it's kind of tough to share a list, but there are some that we use every day. And look, there are a lot of brands that deliver great experiences that have changed our lives, and from the ones that we use every day, from the Amazons and the Netflixes and so many. But I find Freshly amongst a few others that are starting to focus on the core of life and challenging ourselves to think what kind of experience in our products we're going to launch, which will fundamentally change people's lives, especially in a world which is becoming so chaotic, so fast-paced, so nuclear as well in so many ways. So there's some incredible stories out there, and so much focus on sustainability, so much focus on what is going to be the state of the world that we're going to leave behind. And you guys saw the Beyond Meat and stuff that went on a couple of weeks back, and their mission. So much happening in healthcare. So many disruptors have come on board to challenge the status quo. So yeah, there's a lot of excitement out there as a consumer. It's a great time to be in. It's a problem of choices right now. So we all have a beautiful journey ahead. So I'm super excited about that.
That's great. Well, last question for you. Where do you see marketing going? What's the future look like?
I think I shared a little bit of this earlier, but I feel the future of marketing is in this cross-pollination of all kinds of disciplines and mindset coming together. Data and science and storytelling and tech and numbers and finance, and it's no longer that isolated function anymore. But the core, if I had to put down two core things, one is the human within the marketing, both internally and externally, and I think that is going to be the key focus, because my understanding of marketing is it's like a human life. If you're, or an individual, if you're authentic, if you're true to yourself, people around you, your friends and people who don't know you, will see through. And if you have a facade, people will catch that as well eventually. So brands really don't have an option but to have a purpose and mission and be authentic. And on the flip side, I think that the future of marketing will be holding itself accountable for measurable and visible impact. It is no longer about fluff. It is no longer about an ad that makes you laugh, in between Super Bowl. But it is an effort which is truly meaningful, again, which has a purpose, but it moves the needle. It moves the needle in people's lives, within the business, and in the world at large.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been fascinating.
Thank you, Alan. This was a brilliant opportunity, and thanks for having me over.
Hi, it's Alan again. Marketing Today was created and produced by me, with writing and editing by Kevin Greeley, social media support by Megan Woods, art and graphic design by Sarah Dell. If you're new to Marketing Today, please feel free to write us a review on iTunes or your favorite listening platform. Don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends and colleagues about the show. I love to hear from listeners, and you can contact me at marketingtodaypodcast.com. There you'll also find complete show notes with links to anything we talk about on any episode. You can also search our archives. I'm Alan Hart, and this is Marketing Today.